This is problem 3.2.65. Can't see very well what's going on right here, so I'm going to go ahead and and write this out for you so you can see it better. Okay, so we have a manufacturer of slacks has discovered that the number X of khakis sold to retailers per week at a price P dollars per pair is given by the formula. So we're given this formula right here. Okay, and they are telling us that P is the price, and they're telling us that X is the number of khakis. Okay, so that's what's given in the problem. Okay, and then what they're wanting here in part A, so there's three parts. In part A, they're wanting us to write the weekly revenue, so that's R of X for this function. So let's just start with that, and we'll come back and do the other ones. So the revenue is always, you're going to be taking your X, so your number of whatever it is that you're selling here, and multiplying by your price. And that's always what revenue is going to be. That should make logical sense. So take the number of things that you're selling, multiply it by the price, and then you've got your revenue there. So if we just do this multiplication, we have X times this 8 minus, I'm actually going to go ahead and do the square here. So this is X squared over, and when you take 500 and square it, you're going to get 25 with 4 zeros, so that would be 250,000. Okay, so if we go ahead and multiply the x through, then we're looking at 8x minus x cubed over 250,000. Okay, so this is our R of x. That answers part A. That's what they were wanting in part A. And then in part B, they ask us what is the domain of the non-negative function R of x. So for part B, what we need to do is we actually need to find the zeros for this function. And so what I'm going to do is take, sorry, just a little unorganized there, needed to get some paper out. Oh, and I made a mess of that. Okay. Anyways, so here's our R of x, and we need to take this and set it to 0, and then solve, essentially, in order to, first of all, just find the zeros, because we're trying to find the domain of the non-negative function, so we need to actually see where is it, we're trying to find where is it positive and where is it negative, and in order for us to be able to even identify the domain. So the first thing is we have to figure that part out, okay? So we'll start by finding the zeros. So I'm gonna go ahead and factor x out here. And so we're left with 8 minus x squared over the 250,000 equal to 0. And then we are setting we're setting both of these pieces to 0. So set x to 0 and this equal to 0. Okay, so x equals 0 is one of our zeros here. And then if we're solving this, I'm going to go ahead and add the x squared fraction to the other side. And then I'm gonna clear the fraction by multiplying both sides by the 250,000. And then we're solving here, so we end up with, x squared is equal to 8 times that 250,000. It's going to be something really big. So we get 2 with a bunch of zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. And then we need to take the square root of both sides. And they're actually going to want us to keep this in the exact form, so in the radical form. So we're going to need to simplify this. So this is going to be plus or minus. I definitely see 1,000 in here. So if we were to take this number and divide by 1,000, actually it's going to be 100,000. So Yeah, if you divide by, this really is, let me write it out for you. This is 2 times 100,000, essentially is what that is. And I can take the square root of that 100,000 and it's going to be 1,000. So I'm simplifying this now into its exact form. So we get, here's a couple of other zeros. So 1,000 times the square root of 2, and this is plus or minus. But because we're looking for the non-negative function r of x, that we want to look at the domain for that, then we're really not concerned with the negative root there. Okay, so we're really working with the positive 1,000 square root 2 and also x equals 0. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go ahead and take this and divide this up on a number line. So here's 0, and here's my 1,000 square root of 2. Okay, and I'm just going to use this like a sign chart. So I'm going to basically choose a value in here, and I think I'll just choose the value of 1. And then we can go ahead and choose a value over here if we want, you know, maybe something like 2,000. But really, when I find this, whatever this sign is right here, it's going to switch signs right here. Because we're looking at this being, you know, if these two are zeros, again, think about what's happening with a 0. If you've got a function coming up and then coming down, and this is because each of these has a multiplicity of 1. So we're not seeing multiple, you know, there's no multiplicity any higher than 1 on each of these. So we know we're crossing the x-axis. And so if we're going to be crossing at each of these points, we're either going to be coming up and going down, or we're going to be going down and coming up, okay, depending on where we are in the function. And so if this is positive here, then it's going to be negative there, okay, beyond this. And these are our 0 points right here. So really, when I plug in 1, I'll get this information, but I'll also get that information, and I really don't need to evaluate at 2,000, okay. All right, so let me do that. I'm going to evaluate the function at 1. So here's our r of x again. This, whoops, 8x minus x cubed over the 250,000. So if I evaluate at 1, we have 8 minus 1 over this. And this is just like, I don't even really care what the number is here. I'm really just looking for the sign. This is going to be positive. This is 8 minus some really small number, so 7 something, and it's a positive number. So in this region right here, then, we are positive, okay? And so if we're looking at, so this will be negative here, so we're really just looking, if we're looking for the domain of the non-negative function, the domain is going to be right here from 0 up to this value of 1,000 square root of 2, and we want to use interval notation here. We're going to include these points because notice the wording there, they said non-negative. They didn't say positive, so zeros are non-negative. When you're hitting a point of 0, 0 is neither positive nor negative. So if it had said positive, we wouldn't be including these points, but because it says non-negative, these are not negative. So then we can include the endpoints here as part of the domain. So this is that part of the domain. Because this is a polynomial function, the domain of the entire function is all real numbers. Because, you know, we're looking at a cubic here, and it's a negative cubic, so it's doing something like, you know, this kind of a dealie in terms of its graph. And, you know, this is all real numbers in terms of the domain, but they're asking us for just a portion of the domain here. And that's what we're answering in part B, okay? And then in part C, they ask us to choose the correct graph. And let's see if I can show you these graphs. Yeah, it doesn't look like they're very visible. Let me just write them out for you. So the graphs that they give you, so here's A, and here's 5. This is, well, That wasn't very good, so let me just do a better picture here. So this is part C, and we have 4 graphs that they're giving us. Okay, so this is A, B, C, and D. A, they're giving us something like this. B is something like this. And then C is doing this. And D is doing this. Okay, and this is 0. And this value, 1500. 1500's out here a little bit. And then this value, 2250 and 2250. Okay, so, and the values up here, 5,000 and 5,000. So right away, we can eliminate C and D because these are not showing 0 as one of the zeros. So that's just, those are wrong. So those aren't even a consideration. So it's either going to be A or B. And really what you have to decide with A or B here is how high are we going, basically. That's how they're differing. So they're showing the 0 here, and they're showing, this is our 1,000 square root of 2, 0 right here. But then we want to know what's happening in the middle. So how high are we going? And this value right here, sorry, that's a little not readable. So this value right here is 5,000. So really what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick a number that looks like it's about in the middle and just evaluate it and see how high up I go. So I think I'll just pick 700. So let's evaluate R of 700 and see where that puts us. So if I plug that into my function, then I'm looking at this right here. Okay, so this is 5,600 minus 700 cubed is a really big number. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to go ahead and divide. So I get basically 5,600 minus 1,372. Whoops, sorry about that. And so if you take a look at that, it's 4228. Well, if you look at their graphs, this one is nowhere near the 42 mark. This one is much higher, and I haven't done a great job of showing exactly where these are, but A is going to be your solution here because at 700, we're up in this region. And if we were at 700 here, 4228 is going to put you up here, so you're off the graph. So B, it can't be B either. So it has to be A there. Okay, and that's it in this problem.